You're 3 months behind, Jessica. 3 months. You think I run a charity here? The words hit harder than the late October wind that rattled the windows of the cramped apartment. Jessica Harper pressed herself against the peeling wallpaper, her heart hammering so hard she could feel it in her throat. Mr. Kovach, her landlord of 4 years, had never looked at her like this before. His face was red, twisted with rage, and his right hand was clenched into a fist at his side. "I told you," Jessica said, hating how her voice shook. "I told you last week that my mom's medical bills—" "I don't care about your mother," Kovach roared, and Jessica flinched. "I don't care about your sob story. Every tenant's got one. You think you're special?" She wasn't special. She knew that. She was a 32-year-old adjunct professor barely scraping by, teaching English composition to disinterested college freshmen for poverty wages. She lived in a 4th-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that used to be rough, but was now being revitalized, which meant developers were circling like vultures, and landlords like Kovach were getting greedier by the day. The building had been sold 6 months ago to some investment company she'd never heard of, and Kovach, who'd always been unpleasant but tolerable, had become something else entirely. Something mean. Something dangerous. "I have the money," Jessica said, forcing herself to meet his eyes. "I just need 2 more weeks. My paycheck—" "2 more weeks," Kovach mimicked in a cruel sing-song. "Always 2 more weeks with you people. You know what? I'm done. You're out. I want you out of here by tomorrow morning, or I'm calling the cops and having you removed." Terror seized her chest. "You can't do that. The eviction process. There are laws." "Laws?" Kovach laughed, a harsh bark that made her skin crawl. "You want to talk to me about laws? You broke our contract. You think any judge is going to side with a deadbeat tenant?" "I'm not a deadbeat." The words burst out before she could stop them, louder than she'd intended, fueled by 3 months of fear and exhaustion, and sleeping only 4 hours a night because she'd taken on extra tutoring jobs and freelance editing work. Anything to keep her head above water while her mother's cancer treatments drained every cent she had. "I've never missed rent before, not once in 4 years. I'm trying. I'm doing everything I can." Kovach stepped closer. Jessica could smell coffee on his breath, stale and bitter. "You want to know what I think? I think you're a spoiled little brat who's never had to face real consequences. I think you need to learn." He raised his hand. Time seemed to slow. Jessica saw his palm draw back, saw the intent in his eyes, and something primal told her to run, to scream, to do something. But her body was frozen, locked in place by disbelief, because this couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. The apartment door exploded inward. Not opened. Exploded. The cheap lock shattered and the door itself slammed against the interior wall with a crack that made Jessica cry out, and then he was there. The man who stepped through the doorway was tall, easily 6'3", with broad shoulders that filled the frame. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Jessica's car, perfectly tailored to his athletic build. His dark hair was swept back, a few strands falling over his forehead, and his jaw was sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his eyes that made her breath catch. Ice blue. Cold, focused with predatory precision on Mr. Kovach. Jessica saw the ink on his hands first. Tattoos crawled from his wrists up past his cuffs, dark designs she couldn't quite make out. More ink curved up the side of his neck, disappearing into his collar. He moved like violence personified, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. "Touch her," he said, "and die." Kovach had spun around at the intrusion, his hand still raised, his face shifting rapidly from rage to confusion to fear. "Who the hell are you? This is private property. You can't just—" The stranger crossed the room in 3 strides. He didn't run. He didn't rush. He simply moved with the casual confidence of a man who'd never encountered an obstacle he couldn't destroy, and suddenly he was there, his hand wrapped around Kovach's raised wrist. Jessica watched Kovach's face go white. "I asked you a question," the stranger said, though Jessica couldn't remember him asking anything. His voice was still quiet, conversational even, which somehow made it more terrifying. "Actually, no. I made you a statement. touch her, and die. But you had your hand up like you were about to do something incredibly stupid, so now I'm wondering if you didn't hear me properly. I wasn't, Kovac stammered. You weren't what? The stranger's grip must have tightened because Kovac gasped, dropping to his knees. You weren't about to strike a woman half your size? Because I saw what I saw, and I don't like being told I'm wrong about what I see. Please, who owns this building? The question seemed to come from nowhere. Kovac blinked rapidly, sweat beading on his upper lip. What? Simple question. Who owns this building? Meridian Properties. They bought it in April. Please, you're breaking my... And who do you work for? Meridian. I work for Meridian. I'm just the property manager. I just do what they tell me. They tell you to assault tenants? No, I wasn't going to. It wasn't like that. The stranger looked at Kovac the way someone might look at something unpleasant on the bottom of their shoe. Then he released his grip, and Kovac collapsed forward, cradling his wrist. Get out, the stranger said. Kovac scrambled toward the door, moving on his hands and knees before finding his feet. He cast one wild look back at Jessica, a look filled with fear and something else, something that made her think this wasn't over. And then he was gone, his footsteps thundering down the stairwell. Silence crashed into the apartment. Jessica stood frozen against the wall, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. The stranger turned to face her, and she got her first proper look at him. Handsome didn't cover it. He had the kind of face that artists sculpted, all sharp angles and perfect symmetry, but there was nothing soft about him. A thin scar cut through his left eyebrow. His nose looked like it had been broken at least once, and those eyes, those impossible blue eyes, held shadows that suggested he'd seen things, done things, that would give most people nightmares. He was looking at her with an intensity that made her want to shrink back, but also held something else, something almost like concern. Are you hurt? He asked. The question, gentle despite everything, nearly broke her. Jessica shook her head, not trusting her voice. He studied her for a long moment, then his gaze swept the apartment. She saw it through his eyes. The second-hand furniture, the stack of bills on the kitchen counter, the cracks in the ceiling that Kovac had promised to fix years ago, the space heater she'd bought because the radiators barely worked. Evidence of a life held together with duct tape and determination. You're Jessica Harper, he said. Not a question. She found her voice. How do you know my name? I know a lot of things. He moved to her small dining table, a flea market find she'd refinished herself, and pulled out one of the mismatched chairs. Sit. You look like you're about to fall over. She didn't want to sit. She wanted to demand answers, wanted to know who he was and how he'd known to come here and what he'd meant by that look he'd given Kovac, that look that promised violence. But her legs were shaking, adrenaline finally crashing through her system, and she found herself sinking into the chair. He took the seat across from her, and the small table between them suddenly felt inadequate. He was too big for this space, too dangerous, too everything. My name is Dominic Keller, he said. I own Meridian Properties, which means I own this building, which means you're my tenant, and that man was my employee. The words took a moment to penetrate. When they did, confusion swamped her. I don't understand. Why would you... How did you... I make it my business to know about my investments. This building came to my attention 3 months ago as part of a larger acquisition. When I purchase properties, I review the tenant files. I know you've lived here 4 years. I know you teach at Riverside College. I know you're behind on rent, and I know why. Heat flooded her cheeks. The idea of this man, this stranger, knowing about her mother's illness, her financial struggles, all the private failures she tried so hard to hide, made her want to disappear into the floor. I didn't ask for charity, she said stiffly. Good. I'm not offering any. Dominic leaned back in the chair, somehow making the cheap furniture look like a throne. I'm offering you a deal. What kind of deal? I need something. You need something. We help each other. Every instinct Jessica had was screaming at her that this man was dangerous, that she should thank him politely for his intervention and ask him to leave. But desperation had a way of drowning out instinct. "What could I possibly have that you need?" she asked. Dominic smiled. It was not a comfortable expression. "Time, information, and a willing participant in a business arrangement that will benefit us both. That's incredibly vague." "It is. Let me be more specific." He leaned forward and Jessica caught the scent of expensive cologne, something dark and woody. "I have a problem. Her name is Vivian Marchetti, and she's my business rival's daughter. She's decided that I'm going to marry her. I'm not. I've told her this repeatedly. She doesn't believe me, partly because I'm unmarried, and she's convinced no one says no to a Marchetti. I don't see what this has to do with me. I need her to believe I'm unavailable, not interested, completely off the market, which means I need a girlfriend." His eyes locked on hers. "I need you." The world tilted slightly. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" "I want you to be my girlfriend. In public. At events. Convincingly. For approximately 6 months, which is how long it will take to finalize some business dealings that will make it clear to the Marchettis that I'm not a viable option for their daughter. This is insane. This is business. This is..." Jessica stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You can't just buy a girlfriend?" "I'm not buying you. I'm making a mutually beneficial arrangement." Dominic remained seated, unruffled by her agitation. "You need money. I need a convincing partner. I'm willing to pay you $50,000 for 6 months of your time. Approximately 3 evenings per week, some weekends. You'll be compensated for clothes and anything else you need. In addition, your rent will be forgiven. All of it. Past, present, and future for the duration of our arrangement. $50,000. The number hung in the air like a hallucination. $50,000 would pay off her mother's medical debt. It would give her breathing room, let her sleep at night, let her stop calculating whether she could afford both groceries and gas. "Why me?" she whispered. "Because you're not part of my world. Because you're exactly the type of woman Vivian would believe I'd be interested in. Intelligent, self-sufficient. Someone with substance rather than society connections. Because you need what I'm offering, which means you'll take the arrangement seriously." He paused. "And because the way you stood up to Kovac just now, even though you were terrified, tells me you've got spine. I respect that." Jessica's mind was racing. This was crazy. This was the kind of thing that happened in movies, not real life. Men who looked like Dominic Keller and broke down doors and made her landlord cry didn't show up offering $50,000 to play pretend. "I need to think about it," she said. "You have until tomorrow morning. That's when Kovac will be back with the police or the eviction notice, whichever he thinks will hurt you more." Dominic stood, pulling a card from his inner jacket pocket. He laid it on the table. "My number. Call me before 9 a.m. with your decision." He moved toward the door. The broken door, she noticed, which would need to be fixed, then paused. "Jessica," he said, and something in the way he said her name made her stomach flip. "What Kovac almost did to you, that will never happen again. Whether you accept my offer or not, I want you to understand that. He's been dealt with." "What does that mean?" "It means he no longer works for me. It means if he comes near you again, he'll regret it. It means you're under my protection now." "I didn't ask for your protection." "No," Dominic agreed, and that dangerous smile flickered across his face again. "But you have it anyway." Then he was gone, leaving Jessica standing in her broken apartment, holding a business card that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget, wondering if she'd just been rescued, or if she'd inadvertently caught the attention of something far more dangerous than an abusive landlord. She didn't sleep that night. How could she? Her mind wouldn't stop spinning, replaying every moment of the encounter. The sound of the door breaking. The cold precision in Dominic's voice. The way Kovac had crumpled like paper. $50,000. Jessica sat at her kitchen table as the hours crawled toward dawn, Dominic's card in front of her, Her laptop opened to a search engine. Dominic Keller didn't have social media. What he did have were mentions in business journals, a few photographs at charity events, and a handful of extremely vague references to import-export business and private investments. He was 34. He'd been born in Boston, dropped out of college after one semester, and 10 years later was worth an estimated $40 million. There were also rumors, whispers in Reddit threads and true crime forums about the Keller family's alleged connections to organized crime. Nothing concrete, nothing proven. Just smoke that suggested fire. Jessica should have been terrified, should have deleted his number and figured out a different solution to her problems. Instead, she picked up her phone at 6:47 a.m. and typed, "I'll do it." The response came within 30 seconds. "Car will pick you up at 11. Bring measurements. We need to get you proper clothes." Thus began the strangest week of Jessica's life. The car that arrived at 11 was a black Mercedes with windows so tinted she couldn't see inside. The driver, a man built like a tank who introduced himself only as Marcus, said nothing during the drive to an address in the city's most expensive shopping district. Dominic was waiting inside a boutique that didn't have a name on the door, just a brass number, 1847. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, this one charcoal gray, and when Jessica walked in wearing her best dress, which was a 7-year-old shift from Target, she felt like a child playing dress-up. "Good," Dominic said, looking her over with a clinical assessment that should have been insulting, but somehow wasn't. "You clean up well." "That's a terrible compliment." Wasn't a compliment, observation, but his mouth quirked. "We have 4 hours. Sophia here is going to make you look like you belong on my arm." Sophia turned out to be a fierce Italian woman in her 50s who took one look at Jessica and declared, "Finally! Someone with real proportions! I'm so tired of dressing women who live on celery and self-loathing." What followed was a whirlwind of fabric and mirrors, and Sophia's running commentary as she pulled dresses, evening gowns, casual wear, shoes, and accessories that Jessica couldn't even name. Every time Jessica looked at a price tag and felt her heart stop, Dominic would appear at her elbow and say, "Don't." "This is too much," Jessica protested after the 15th outfit. "I don't need all this." "You do, if you're going to be seen with me." Dominic was sitting in a leather chair, completely relaxed, a glass of something amber in his hand. "Vivian and her circle will scrutinize everything about you. They'll notice if you wear the same dress twice in a month. They'll notice your shoes, your jewelry, your bag. You need to look the part." "The part of what? A kept woman?" "The part of my girlfriend," he corrected, and something in his tone made her look at him sharply. "And for the record, you're not being kept. You're being compensated for a job. There's a difference." By the time they left the boutique, Jessica had a wardrobe worth more than she made in a year. A team of delivery people were bringing everything to a new apartment. "You can't stay in that building," Dominic had said flatly, and her head was spinning. "This is moving too fast," she said as Marcus drove them through the city. "It has to." Dominic shifted to face her in the back seat. "There's an event tomorrow night. Art gallery opening. Vivian will be there. It's the perfect opportunity to make our relationship public." "Tomorrow? I'm not ready." "You'll be ready." It wasn't arrogance in his voice. It was certainty. "Marcus will pick you up at 7. Wear the black dress with the—" He gestured vaguely at his shoulder. "The off-shoulder Valentino," Sophia's assistant had called it, after Jessica had fallen in love with how it made her look. Elegant, sophisticated, like someone who belonged in Dominic Keller's world. "I don't know how to act at these things," Jessica admitted. "I'm a college professor. I go to faculty mixers where the wildest thing that happens is someone brings $2 Chuck and pretends it's vintage." For the first time, Dominic's expression softened. "You act like yourself. That's the whole point. You're not like the women in my usual circle. That's what makes this believable." "What are the women in your usual circle like?" "Boring," he said bluntly. "Predictable. They want what they think I can give them. Money, status, power by association. You want to pay your mother's medical bills and keep your apartment. That's honest." "I appreciate honesty." The car pulled up in front of a building that made Jessica's old apartment look like a storage shed. Glass and steel, with a doorman and everything. "This is where you're putting me up?" she asked faintly. 10th floor, 2-bedroom. Marcus will bring your things. I'm 3 floors above you. If you need anything, call me. Dominic handed her a phone. Not her phone, a new one, sleek and expensive. Your number's the same. I've added my contacts. Don't give this number to anyone without asking me first. Why not? Because in my world, information is currency. Your connection to me makes you valuable. Some people might try to exploit that. The casual way he said it, like he was discussing the weather rather than potential threats, sent a chill down her spine. What have I gotten myself into? Dominic looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture so unexpectedly gentle that Jessica froze. Something that's going to change your life, he said quietly. Question is whether you're brave enough to see it through. His hand dropped. He nodded to Marcus, and then the car door was opening, and Jessica was being ushered into her new building by a doorman who called her Miss Harper, like she was someone important. She spent that night in an apartment 3 times the size of her old place, surrounded by designer bags she was afraid to unpack, wondering if she'd just made the best decision of her life, or the worst. The next evening, when Marcus picked her up, Jessica almost didn't recognize herself in the mirror. The Valentino dress fit like it had been made for her, because it had, she realized, after Sophia's team had done their measurements. It hugged her curves, the off-shoulder design elegant rather than provocative, the black fabric making her skin glow. Her hair had been styled by someone Marcus had brought to the apartment, another silent, efficient person in Dominic's network, swept up with a few tendrils framing her face. Minimal jewelry, diamond studs, and a delicate bracelet. She looked expensive. She looked like she belonged. The illusion shattered the moment she stepped out of the car at the gallery and saw the crowd. This wasn't an art opening. This was a display of wealth and power. Beautiful people in beautiful clothes drinking champagne that probably cost more per bottle than her monthly rent used to be. Jessica's hands trembled as Marcus opened her door. Miss Harper, he said quietly. Mr. Keller is waiting inside. Right. She could do this. She'd stood up to Kovac. She'd survived her mother's diagnosis and 3 jobs and exhaustion so deep it felt like drowning. She could handle a party. She made it 5 steps into the gallery before someone bumped into her, champagne sloshing dangerously close to her dress. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. The woman was blonde, beautiful, and wearing enough diamonds to fund a small country. I didn't see you there. Wait, who are you? Before Jessica could answer, another voice cut through the space. She's with me. Dominic appeared at her side like a shadow, his hand settling on the small of her back. The touch sent electricity up her spine. He looked devastating in a black suit, no tie, the top button of his shirt undone just enough to show the hint of more tattoos. And you are? The blonde asked, her smile sharpening. Not interested, Dominic said flatly. To Jessica, in a lower voice. You look stunning. She barely heard him. She was too focused on the way every conversation in their immediate vicinity had stopped. People were staring, whispering. Everyone's looking at us, she murmured. They're looking at you. Let them. Dominic's hand pressed more firmly against her back, guiding her deeper into the gallery. You're doing fine. I haven't done anything yet. You showed up. That's enough. They made it to the bar, Dominic ordering her a glass of white wine. You need something to do with your hands, he explained, when a new voice interrupted. Well, well, Dominic Keller with a date. Someone alert the media. Jessica turned to see a man approaching, tall and lean with the kind of refined features that belonged on currency. But where Dominic's presence felt like controlled danger, this man radiated cold calculation. Marco, Dominic said, and his hand slid from Jessica's back to her waist, pulling her closer. Didn't expect to see you here. Father insisted. Something about maintaining appearances. Marco's dark eyes slid to Jessica. And who's this? Jessica Harper, Dominic said before she could introduce herself. My girlfriend. The word hung in the air, official and final. This was it. The moment the pretense became public. Marco's eyebrows rose. Girlfriend? That's a first. I don't think I've ever heard you use that word. There's a first time for everything. How did you two meet? Marco pressed, and Jessica realized this was a test. She opened her mouth, unsure what to say, but Dominic beat her to it. She's my tenant, or was. I saw her. I wanted her, and she made me work for it. He looked down at Jessica, and the heat in his eyes was so convincing, she almost forgot it was fake. Only woman who's ever made me beg. Jessica's face flamed. Dominic. It's true. He raised her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that made her forget how to breathe. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Marco studied them with an expression Jessica couldn't read. Then he smiled. Interesting. I look forward to getting to know you, Jessica. Any woman who can bring Dominic Keller to heel is someone worth knowing. He drifted away, and Jessica released a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That was Marco Marchetti, Dominic said quietly. Vivian's brother. Which means in about 30 seconds... Dominic! The voice was high, sharp, and furious. Jessica turned to see a woman storming through the crowd like an avenging angel. She was beautiful in that untouchable way of the very rich. Sharp cheekbones, glossy black hair, a red dress that probably cost more than a car. Vivian Marchetti, Jessica realized. Who? Vivian said, coming to a stop in front of them. Is this? Dominic's arm tightened around Jessica's waist. Vivian, good to see you too. Don't. Vivian's eyes were fixed on Jessica like lasers. Don't pretend this is a social call. Who is she? Jessica Harper, my girlfriend. Girlfriend? Vivian laughed, the sound sharp as breaking glass. You don't have girlfriends, Dominic. You have distractions. So, which one is she? Something hot flared in Jessica's chest. She'd dealt with entitled students, dismissive administrators, and men who thought adjunct professors were there for decoration. She knew how to handle being underestimated. I'm the one he goes home to, Jessica said, keeping her voice level, which, judging by your reaction, isn't you. Vivian's face went red. You have no idea who you're talking to. I know exactly who I'm talking to. The woman who can't take no for an answer. Jessica felt Dominic's surprise in the way he stilled beside her, but she pressed on. He's not interested, Vivian. He's with me. You should probably accept that and move on. For a moment, Jessica thought Vivian might actually hit her. The other woman's hand clenched, her face contorted with rage. Then Dominic stepped between them. His movement was smooth but absolute, his body a wall between Jessica and Vivian. When he spoke, his voice was the same deadly quiet he'd used with Kovac. You want to put your hands on her? He asked softly. Think very carefully about that decision. Vivian paled. I wasn't going to... You were. I saw it. Dominic's presence seemed to expand, filling the space, drawing every eye in the gallery. Let me make something very clear to you, Vivian, and to everyone else who's listening. Jessica is mine. That means she's untouchable. Anyone who threatens her, insults her, or even looks at her wrong answers to me. We understand each other? The gallery had gone silent. Jessica could feel dozens of eyes on them, could feel the weight of Dominic's declaration settling over her like a brand. Vivian looked between them, her expression cycling through rage, humiliation, and something that might have been fear. Then she spun on her heel and stalked away, her designer shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. The moment she was gone, conversation resumed, but it was different now. Charged. Electric. Jessica realized she was shaking. Dominic turned to her, his hand coming up to cup her face. To anyone watching, it would look romantic, intimate, but his eyes were searching hers with genuine concern. You all right? He asked quietly. I think I just made an enemy. You did. His thumb brushed her cheekbone. But you also made a statement. Everyone here now knows exactly where you stand. They'll respect that. Will they? They'll respect you, or they'll deal with me. He smiled, and it was warm, proud even. That thing you did, standing up to her, that was perfect. I knew you had spine, but that was something else. I don't like bullies, Jessica said. Her heart was still racing, adrenaline making her bold. Doesn't matter if they wear designer clothes or not. Something shifted in Dominic's expression, something she couldn't quite name. His thumb continued its gentle path across her cheek, and for a moment Jessica forgot this was an arrangement, forgot they were pretending. It felt real, dangerously real. "Come on," Dominic said finally, dropping his hand. "Let's get out of here. You've earned a proper dinner, not whatever pretentious thing they're calling food here." They left the gallery amid whispers and stares, and Jessica tried not to think about how Dominic's hand never left her back, how he helped her into the car with careful attention, how the space between them felt charged with something she was afraid to name. He took her to a restaurant that wasn't expensive, at least not obviously so, but where the owner greeted Dominic like family and ushered them to a private table in the back. "I thought we'd go somewhere quieter," Dominic explained as they settled in. "After that performance, you deserve to breathe." "Is it always like that? In your world?" "Usually worse." He ordered wine without looking at the menu, then turned his attention fully to her. "You did well tonight. Better than well. Vivian's going to be furious, which means she'll make it known that I'm taken. Mission accomplished." Right. The mission. The arrangement. This wasn't real. Jessica needed to remember that. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we settle into a routine. A few events per week, like I said. You'll need to be seen at my office occasionally. I'll set you up with a consulting position, something that explains why you're around. And we need to establish some ground rules." "Ground rules?" "For the relationship. What's acceptable, what isn't." Dominic leaned back as the wine arrived, waiting until they were alone again. "I won't ask you to do anything you're uncomfortable with, but we need to sell this, which means physical affection in public, touching, kissing, the appearance of intimacy." Jessica's mouth went dry. "Kissing?" "Not tonight," he said quickly. "We just went public. It would seem rushed, but eventually, yes. We'll need to." His eyes met hers. "I'll always ask first. And if you say no, that's final." The care in his words, the respect, did something complicated to her chest. This man who'd broken down her door and threatened her landlord, and faced down Vivian Marchetti like an avenging angel, was promising her consent, boundaries, control. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay." They had dinner, actual food, Italian dishes that made Jessica moan with pleasure, and talked. Really talked. Dominic asked about her teaching, and to her surprise, he listened. Asked follow-up questions, seemed genuinely interested in her thesis about intersectionality in contemporary literature. "You're not what I expected," Jessica admitted as dessert arrived. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone more ruthless, I guess." Dominic's smile was wry. "I am ruthless, just not with you." The words shouldn't have made her feel warm, shouldn't have made her want to lean closer. But they did, and she was in trouble, Jessica realized. She was in so much trouble. The next 6 weeks fell into a rhythm. 3 times a week, Marcus would pick Jessica up for an event. Charity galas, business dinners, gallery openings, the opera. Dominic was always there, always attentive, always touching her in small ways. A hand on her back, his fingers tangling with hers, his arm around her shoulders. The media started paying attention. There were photographs, Jessica on Dominic's arm, Jessica laughing at something he said, Jessica looking elegant and polished, and nothing like the exhausted professor she'd been 2 months ago. Her mother called, confused by the tabloid coverage. "Sweetie, who is this man?" her mother asked, voice thin from the latest round of chemo. "The pictures, he looks like he's a friend, Mom. A good friend. He's helping us out." "Helping how?" Jessica couldn't tell her the truth, couldn't explain the arrangement, the money that was quietly paying off medical bills, the way Dominic had sent a private nurse to check on her mother without being asked. "Just trust me," Jessica said. "Everything's going to be okay." And for the first time in months, she believed it. But something else was happening. Something Jessica hadn't anticipated. She was starting to care about Dominic. Really care. It was in the small moments, the way he texted her every morning to ask how she slept, The way he remembered she hated olives and always ordered dishes without them. The way he'd shown up at her apartment, her new, safe apartment, with soup when she'd mentioned feeling under the weather. "This isn't part of the arrangement," she'd said, looking at the bag from her favorite restaurant. "No," Dominic agreed. "It's not." He'd stayed, made her tea, watched bad television with her until she fell asleep on the couch, and when she woke up at 3 a.m, there was a blanket over her, and he was gone, but there was a note on the coffee table. "Feel better." She was falling for him. It was stupid and reckless and completely against the rules they'd established, but she couldn't help it. The problem was she had no idea if he felt the same. In public, Dominic was attentive, protective, everything a boyfriend should be. But they hadn't kissed. Not once. He'd find excuses, turn his head so his lips caught her temple instead of her mouth, pull her close for a hug that looked intimate from a distance but wasn't. Jessica told herself it was professionalism, boundaries, but sometimes she'd catch him looking at her with an expression that made her heart race, and she'd wonder. The breaking point came at a gala 6 weeks into their arrangement. It was the biggest event yet, a charity fundraiser at a historic mansion, 500 guests, everyone who was anyone in the city. Jessica wore a midnight blue gown that made her feel like royalty, and when Dominic saw her, he'd stopped dead in his tracks. "Jessica," he'd said, just her name, but the way he said it made her shiver. The night had been perfect. They'd danced, actual dancing, his hand on her waist, her hand in his, moving together like they'd done this 1,000 times. They'd laughed at terrible speeches and made sarcastic comments about ice sculptures, and for a few hours Jessica let herself pretend it was real. Then she'd gone to the restroom and overheard 2 women talking. Completely fake, obviously. Look at her. She's pretty enough, but she's nobody. Dominic Keller would never actually date someone like that. "I heard he's paying her. Like an escort, but classier." Does she actually think it's real? God, how pathetic. Jessica had stood in the bathroom stall, frozen, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. They were right. This wasn't real. She was being paid to play a part, and somewhere along the way, she'd lost sight of that. Had started believing her own performance. She'd returned to the gala with her face carefully neutral, and when Dominic asked if something was wrong, she'd smiled and said she was fine. But she wasn't fine. The ride home was silent. Jessica stared out the window, watching the city lights blur past, trying to rebuild the walls she'd let crumble. "Talk to me," Dominic said finally. "Nothing to talk about." "Jessica, I said I'm fine?" The car stopped. Jessica realized they were at her building, but Dominic made no move to let her out. Instead, he nodded to Marcus, who got out and walked a discreet distance away. "Something happened tonight," Dominic said. "What?" "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." The gentleness in his voice nearly broke her. Jessica turned to face him, and maybe he saw something in her expression, because his own face darkened. "Who said something to you?" he demanded. "Tell me who, and I'll handle it." "You can't handle reality, Dominic," the words burst out before she could stop them. "This isn't real. We're not real. I'm an employee, someone you're paying to solve a problem. And I forgot that. For a while, I actually forgot. And that's on me, but I can't—" She broke off, horrified to feel tears burning her eyes. Dominic stared at her. "You think this isn't real?" "I know it isn't. I overheard people tonight talking about how pathetic I am for thinking you'd actually want someone like me. And they're right. This is a job. I need to remember that." "Jessica, the arrangement's working, right? Vivian's backed off. Your business deal's going through. We can probably end this early, and you can find—" Dominic kissed her. One moment she was talking, and the next his hand was in her hair, his mouth was on hers, and her entire world narrowed to the point of contact. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, consuming, full of weeks of tension and restraint finally snapping. Jessica made a sound that might have been his name and kissed him back, her hands fisting in his jacket, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathing hard. Dominic pressed his forehead to hers, his hand still tangled in her hair. "You think I'm pretending?" he said roughly. "You think I touch you like I do, look at you like I do, think about you every goddamn minute of the day because I'm pretending?" The arrangement was an excuse, a way to have you without admitting what I actually wanted. From the moment I saw you standing up to that bastard landlord, terrified but brave, I knew I was in trouble. He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "I haven't kissed you because I knew if I did, I wouldn't be able to stop. Wouldn't want to stop. This stopped being fake for me about 5 minutes after I met you." Jessica's heart was hammering so hard she could barely hear. "You're serious?" "I'm serious. Those people who said I'd never actually want someone like you, they're idiots. You're intelligent, courageous, real. You don't want me for what I can give you. You push back when I'm being an arrogant ass. You make me laugh. You make me want to be—" He broke off, shaking his head. "You make me want to be someone worthy of you. Dominic, I'm in love with you, Jessica. I know that's not part of the arrangement. I know it's complicated, but I'm done pretending otherwise." The words hung between them, enormous and terrifying, and perfect. "I'm in love with you too," Jessica whispered. "I have been for weeks. I thought I was being an idiot." He kissed her again, softer this time, tender in a way that made her chest ache. "Not an idiot," he murmured against her lips. "Brave, so brave." They sat in the car, wrapped around each other, while Marcus pretended to be very interested in something down the street. Finally, Jessica pulled back. "So what now? What does this mean?" "It means the arrangement is over. You're not my employee anymore. You're mine." Dominic smiled at her expression. "If you want to be. No pressure, no money. Just us." "Just us," Jessica repeated. It sounded like a dream. "Just us. I'll still pay your mother's medical bills. That's not negotiable. But everything else? That's real. You and me, figuring this out together. Your world, the people, the danger, all of it, I'll keep you safe. Always. That's a promise." His hand cupped her face. "But I need you to be sure. This life, my life, it's not easy. And I'm not easy. I'm possessive and overprotective, and there are parts of my business you're better off not knowing about. But I'll never lie to you. I'll never hurt you. And I'll spend every day trying to deserve you." Jessica thought about the past 6 weeks. The transformation from desperate, exhausted professor to this. A woman who felt powerful, protected, cherished. A woman who'd found her spine standing up to Vivian Marchetti, and her voice arguing about literature with a man who actually listened. A woman who'd fallen in love with a dangerous, complicated, surprisingly gentle man who looked at her like she was the answer to a question he hadn't known to ask. "I'm sure," she said. Dominic's smile was blazing. "Yeah? Yeah. I'm in. All in." He kissed her again, and this time when Marcus cleared his throat gently, they both laughed. "Come upstairs," Dominic said. "We need to talk about what happens next." "What does happen next?" "Well, for starters, you're moving in with me. That apartment's too far away." "Dominic, we can't just—" "We can. We are. I want you close." His expression turned serious. "And I need you safe. Vivian's not going to take this well. Neither is her father. There might be pushback." "What kind of pushback?" "The kind I'll handle. But I'll sleep better knowing you're with me." He traced her jawline. "Let me protect you, Jessica. Let me take care of you. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because you're mine now, and I take care of what's mine." The possessiveness should have bothered her. Instead, it made her feel safe in a way she'd never experienced before. "Okay," she said. "But I'm keeping my job. I'm not giving up teaching." "Wouldn't ask you to. Your work matters to you. I respect that." He paused. "Though you should probably accept the tenure-track position when they offer it." "What tenure-track position?" "The one they'll offer you next week after I make a sizable donation to the English department. Dominic, what? I told you I'd take care of what's mine. That includes your career. He grinned at her outraged expression. Don't worry, the donation's anonymous. You'll get the position on your own merit. I'm just expediting the process. Jessica wanted to argue. She should argue. But the man had just confessed his love, and kissed her senseless, and promised to pay her mother's medical bills, and she was running out of reasons to fight his protective instincts. You're ridiculous, she said instead. I'm yours. He kissed her forehead. Come on, let's go upstairs and figure out the rest of our lives. They went upstairs, to his apartment, not hers, and Jessica got her first real look at how Dominic Keller lived. The penthouse was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture that managed to look comfortable rather than cold, and artwork that Jessica suspected was original rather than prints. But what caught her attention was the books. An entire wall of them, carefully organized, with titles ranging from philosophy to fiction to poetry. You read, she said, surprised. I'm not just a pretty face and terrible life choices. Dominic shrugged out of his jacket, tossing it over a chair. I dropped out of college, but I never stopped learning. What, you thought I was all muscle and menace? Little bit, he laughed, pulling her close. Disappointed? Opposite of disappointed. Jessica wrapped her arms around his waist, letting herself relax into his embrace. This is a lot to process. I know. Take your time. His hand stroked down her back. But while you're processing, there's something else we need to discuss. What? Dominic pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Marry me. Jessica's brain short-circuited. What? Marry me. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. I want you legally bound to me, protected. Mine in every way that matters. We've been together, actually together, for about 30 minutes. I've been in love with you for 6 weeks. That's long enough to know. His expression turned serious. I understand if you need time, but I want you to know my intentions. I'm not playing games, Jessica. You're it for me. The only one. And I want the world to know it. This was insane. This was the kind of whirlwind romance that only happened in movies or books, not real life. Jessica should say no, should ask for time, for space, for sense. Instead, she heard herself say, Ask me again in 3 months. Dominic blinked. 3 months? Give me 3 months of this, of us being real. If you still feel the same way, ask me again. She smiled at his expression. If I say yes, then, we'll know it's not just the intensity of the past few weeks. We'll know it's real. It's already real. Then 3 months won't change anything. Dominic studied her for a long moment, then smiled slowly. You're negotiating with me. I like it. I learned from the best. 3 months, he agreed. But I'm warning you now. I'm going to spend every one of those days convincing you to say yes. I'm counting on it. He kissed her then, deep and thorough, a kiss that was a promise and a claiming all at once. When they finally came up for air, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Stay tonight, he said. Not, we don't have to do anything. Just stay. Let me hold you. Let me get used to the idea that you're actually here, actually mine. So she stayed. They talked until dawn, curled up on his couch, sharing stories and secrets and dreams. Jessica learned about his childhood, rough, complicated, marked by violence and loss. Learned how he'd built his empire from nothing, using intelligence and ruthlessness in equal measure. Learned that beneath the dangerous exterior was a man who read poetry and supported 6 charities anonymously, and had cried when his sister's daughter was born. She fell more in love with him by the hour, and when she finally slept, wrapped in his arms, she felt safe in a way she'd never experienced before. The next 3 months were a revelation. Dominic courted her properly. Flowers appeared at her office. He showed up at her lectures and sat in the back row, watching her teach with an intensity that made her students whisper. They had real dates, not staged appearances, but actual evenings where they talked and laughed and learned each other. He introduced her to his world carefully. His business associates, the people who mattered. Made it clear she was protected, cherished, off limits. When Vivian tried one last time to cause trouble, spreading rumors, making threats, Dominic shut it down so completely that Vivian's own father called to apologize. "What did you do?" Jessica asked. "Business," was all Dominic would say, but his smile was sharp. "She won't bother you again." Jessica's mother met him, and, despite her initial suspicion, fell in love with him almost as quickly as Jessica had. "He's dangerous," her mother said after Dominic left from a visit. "But he's dangerous for you, not to you. That's the difference." "I know, Mom. You love him." "I do." Her mother smiled. "Good. You deserve someone who looks at you the way he does. Like you hung the moon." The tenure track position came through, exactly as Dominic had predicted. Jessica accepted it with pride, knowing she'd earned it, even if Dominic's donation had helped speed things along. Life settled into something that felt almost normal. Almost, because Dominic Keller's world would never be completely normal. There were always shadows, always threats lurking at the edges. But Jessica found she didn't mind. Not when those shadows came with protection, with loyalty, with a love that felt unshakable. Exactly 3 months to the day after their conversation, Dominic took her back to the gallery where they'd gone public. "Why are we here?" Jessica asked as they walked through the empty space. It was closed for a private event, apparently, though she didn't see any guests. "Because this is where everyone saw you as mine for the first time," Dominic said. "Seemed appropriate." "Appropriate for what?" He turned to face her, and Jessica's breath caught. There was something in his expression. Nervous, hopeful, determined. 3 months, he said. "You asked for 3 months, to be sure. It's been exactly that long. So I'm asking again." He dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Jessica Harper, you're the smartest, bravest, most infuriating woman I've ever met. You challenge me. You see me. Not the money or the power or the reputation, but me. You've made me want to be better, do better, be someone worthy of the way you look at me. I'm still dangerous. I'm still complicated. But I'm yours, completely and forever. Will you marry me?" The ring was stunning. A sapphire surrounded by diamonds, unique and perfect. Jessica looked at the man kneeling before her, the man who'd broken down her door to protect her, who'd stood between her and Vivian Marchetti without hesitation, who'd paid her mother's medical bills and supported her career and held her through nightmares and made her laugh until she cried. The man who'd seen her at her lowest and decided she was worth everything. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking on the word. "Yes, I'll marry you." Dominic's smile was blazing. He slid the ring onto her finger, then stood, sweeping her into his arms and kissing her with enough passion to make her dizzy. When they broke apart, Jessica realized the gallery wasn't empty after all. Her mother was there, tears streaming down her face. Marcus was there, smiling. Even Sophia was there, dabbing at her eyes with a handkerchief. "You planned this," Jessica accused. "I've been planning this for 3 months," Dominic admitted. "I knew you'd say yes." "Confident, hopeful," he corrected. He cupped her face in his hands. "You're everything, Jessica. Everything I didn't know I needed. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret saying yes." Jessica kissed him again, surrounded by the people they loved, wearing his ring, feeling like she'd stepped into a fairy tale. "I could never regret you," she whispered against his lips. "You're my happy ending." "No," Dominic said, his smile soft and genuine. "I'm your beginning. We're just getting started." And as he kissed her again, Jessica believed it. After months of fear and exhaustion and barely surviving, she'd found not just safety, but love. Not just protection, but partnership. She'd found home. The wedding happened 3 months later, small and intimate, despite Dominic's initial plans for something larger. "I don't need a spectacle," Jessica had argued. "I just need you." So they'd married in the garden of a historic estate, surrounded by close friends and family. Jessica wore a dress that made her feel like a queen, and Dominic had looked at her like she was the only person in the world. When he'd said his vows, promising to protect, cherish, and love her until his last breath, there wasn't a dry eye in attendance. And when Jessica had said hers, promising to stand beside him, challenge him, and love him through whatever came, Dominic's hand had trembled in hers. "You've made me the luckiest man alive," he'd whispered. "Good," she'd whispered back. "You deserve it." Their life together wasn't perfect. There were still challenges, threats from Dominic's world, the constant need for security, the reality of loving someone whose business operated in shadows. But there was also joy. Jessica's career flourished. Her mother's cancer went into remission. She and Dominic built a life filled with laughter and passion, and the kind of partnership she'd never thought possible. A year after their wedding, Jessica found herself back in the apartment where it had all started. Dominic had kept the building, renovated it completely, but left her original unit untouched. "Why?" she'd asked. "Because this is where I found you," he'd said simply. "Where everything changed. I wanted to preserve it." Now, standing in that apartment with Dominic's arms around her and their future stretching bright ahead, Jessica marveled at how far she'd come. From a desperate, exhausted woman facing eviction to this, married to a man who loved her fiercely, protected completely, and saw her truly. "What are you thinking?" Dominic asked, his chin resting on her shoulder. "That I'm grateful," Jessica said. "For that terrible day. For Kovac being awful. For you breaking down that door. For all of it. Even the scary parts? Especially the scary parts. They led me to you." Dominic turned her in his arms, his expression soft in the way it only ever was with her. "I'd break down 1,000 doors for you. Face down 1,000 threats. Whatever it takes to keep you safe and happy. I know." She reached up, tracing the line of his jaw. "That's why I love you. I love you too, more than I thought possible." He kissed her forehead. "Ready to go home?" Home. Their penthouse. Their life. Their future. "Yes," Jessica said, taking his hand. "Let's go home." And as they left that apartment, the place where everything had started, Jessica looked back one last time and smiled. Sometimes, she thought, the best love stories began in the darkest moments. Sometimes you had to face down your worst fears to find your greatest joy. And sometimes, just sometimes, your Prince Charming showed up by breaking down your door and threatening your enemies, and that was exactly what you needed. Dominic caught her smiling and raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Nothing," Jessica said. "Just thinking about fairy tales. And I think I like our version better." Dominic laughed, that rare, genuine sound that she'd learned to treasure. "Me too, Professor. Me too." They left together, hands linked, walking into a future neither of them could have predicted, but both of them had chosen. And if somewhere in the city Vivian Marchetti saw the announcement of their wedding and threw her wineglass at the wall, well, that was just a bonus. Jessica Harper had learned something important in the past year. The best revenge wasn't anger or spite. It was living well, living happy, living loved. And with Dominic Keller's ring on her finger and his love surrounding her like armor, she was living better than she'd ever dreamed possible. Their story hadn't ended with "I do." It had just begun. And Jessica couldn't wait to see what came next.